throughout the Advent season is I would pray and I would meditate and contemplate on Christmas that we were anticipating. From time to time I would think of what I wanted to speak about at Christmas. And over and over and over again, it kept coming back to me that the gospel, which is well proclaimed, is enough. And yet, as well as the gospel is proclaimed, by whoever it's proclaimed by, it is a fact that in many instances, adults have a hard time experiencing this God whom the gospel proclaims. We have, as adults, such a hard time often to hear God, to see Him, to be aware of the many signs that He gives us of His manifestation, of His revelation, of His self-revelation. And yet I was mindful yesterday as I was praying that the first reading from the second book of Samuel told of a story of a king, David, who wanted to build a house for God. And Nathan the prophet, knowing that David was in right relationship with God, said to him, "Do whatever you choose." And yet that night, Nathan went to sleep and he had a dream, and God spoke to him saying, "Tell David that he is not to build me a house, for he has been in too many wars, shed too much blood, and he is not worthy to build me a house. But tell David that I will spring one from his own loins, from his own house, one who will build me a house. It will not be a house of cedar, nor will it be a house of gold, but it will be a house where God tabernacles and dwells among people within human flesh." I'm mindful of this scriptural passage that many of us are aware of, that we see often in John 3:16, "For God so loved the world." And as the second, in many ways, in these last days, He has chosen to speak to us directly through His Son. And yet we have, as adults, such a hard time connecting. And children are so full of mystery. Children have the easiest time with the mystical. Children have the easiest time with God. If you ask them, they will tell you of their conversations. They will tell you what they hear. They will tell you what they see. So I thought maybe what I would share with you is a couple of stories of children's experiences with God. True stories. First is about a little boy named Charlie. Charlie is 4 years old. And Charlie is a resident at St. Charles Children's Home, which is down the street. And he, for the present moment, is being cared for by the sisters. And when Charlie first came to St. Charles, can you imagine being 4 years old and being in a very strange place? And so he woke up in the middle of the night one night, and not knowing where he was very afraid. And so he got up out of his bed, and he went downstairs looking for the sisters, hollering, "Hey guys, where are you?" And finally he made enough ruckus that a couple of the sisters got up. And he very matter-of-factly said to the sisters that when he went through the dining room, that he saw Jesus standing there. And so one of the sisters said to him, "Well, Charlie, what did Jesus say to you?" He said, "Jesus told me to go back to bed, but I didn't listen." And then on another occasion, he was with one of the sisters in the house house someplace, and again, very matter-of-factly looked at her and said, "Jesus made me, you know." And the sister said, "Well, yes, Charlie, that's right. Jesus made you, and he made everybody." And then again, just very quickly said, "Yeah, but I knew it when I was a baby." What do you say to that? It's a 4-year-old child. And then the day came when the sisters brought him to church here at Holy Rosary. And the first time he walked into the church, and he walked in, he saw the crucifix up on the wall, and he said, "Who is that guy?" And so one of the sisters explained it was a statue of Jesus, and that Jesus was God, and that Jesus wanted to take care of him. Shortly after that, he wanted to know who the guys in white were up there. So the sister had to explain that they were altar servers and that they were Father's helpers. And then came time that we set the altar for the Mass, and he saw the chalices up on the altar, and he said to Sister, "Are those trophies?" And so Sister said, "No, those are cups called chalices, and in a little while, Father is going to make a miracle. He's going to take the water and the wine and the bread, and he's going to make them into Jesus' body and blood." So when it was time for communion, Sister came to communion, and as she came back to her seat, he leaned over and he whispered to her, "Did Father make God yet?" So last night, he was here at the 6 o'clock Mass. And so he wanted to come back to see me in the sacristy. He wanted me to see him all dressed up. And so he said to me, "You know, I don't care about all that talking stuff." He said, "I just want you to get to the part where you make God, where you make Jesus." This 4-year-old holy. And so when I held the host up, he whispered to one of the sisters, "Wow, that's a big one." And so Charlie had a Christmas list. And here's his Christmas list. "Dear Santa, my name is Charlie. I'm 4 years old. And I would like for you to bring me some gifts for Christmas. Here's my list. I want a new dinosaur. I want a fake computer. I want a froggy that jumps after you push the thing in the back. I want a real clock. I want a new book. I want a fake butterfly that moves around with a button on the bottom. And lots of paper to draw and write on. And he had one last thing on his list. He wanted a crucifix. And so this morning, after Santa came, he opened some of his gifts, and he went to his stocking, and guess what he pulled out of his stocking? A crucifix. And you know what he said? Yes! 4 years old. Now I want to share with you another story. And this story was shared with me by our confirmation director, Mrs. Ann McGregor. It's about a granddaughter who's 1 year old. And this is what she said. Dear Father Paul, I wanted to share with you a powerful faith experience I had with my 1-year-old granddaughter. For some time now, each week Ava comes to church. Her attention is always centered on the processional and recessional cross at Holy Mass. This is when the altar server is carrying the crucifix. She points to Jesus all the way in and all the way out. She's learned to say Jesus' name, and she is drawn to the crucifix or any image of Jesus which she sees. Although this in itself is amazing, I experienced an even more amazing faith encounter with her recently that still has me in awe. On December 13th, St. Elizabeth's Seton School was having their annual Christmas concert. And I came early to unlock the church. It was Tuesday, which is the day I babysit Ava. So I brought Ava along to unlock the church with me. She's learned to walk, and so I had her following me around as I unlocked the doors. She was excited to be walking through the aisles. As we passed by the statue of the Blessed Mother, which is right there, Ava stopped following me and was gazing at the Blessed Mother. She was just staring at that. She didn't move and didn't respond to my promptings of me calling to her. She was just so focused on the Blessed Mother. I had to pick her up in order to continue unlocking. Passing by again as she followed me, she again stopped and gazed at the Blessed Mother. Wouldn't move. I had to again pick her up to continue unlocking the church. So when I got to St. Anne Hall, which is on the other side of the doors, they locked the hall and turned on the lights, and Ava went in and walked right over to the stained glass window that has an image of the Blessed Mother. Ava pointed and said, "May." Astonished, I said, "Who is that?" She again said, "May." I picked her up and she leaned forward to give her a kiss. Over and over, she kept going back to the image on the window and saying Mary's name. Ava is just learning words and has a very limited vocabulary, so I wondered if my daughter Sarah had taught her, seeing this, how I had never mentioned Mary's name to her before. I called Sarah after the concert to ask her if she had ever taught Mary's name. I was awed by this because she was so clear in pronouncing her name and very adamant of going to her and gazing at her. Sarah said that she'd never taught her how to say Mary's name. The following Sunday, I wanted to see if what I experienced with Ava was real. So when she came to church, I brought her to the window again, and she got all excited and clearly said, "May," and again leaned forward to touch her. It is clear to me that Ava knew who the Blessed Mother was, but it is not clear to me how she came to know this. I wonder if, in fact, she remembers her. I wonder if she sees her, or if the Blessed Mother speaks to her. I'm curious of your insight regarding this. Truly, this has inspired me to become more childlike in my faith. Now, we can hear these things and we can say, "Oh, that's a cute little story." However, there's a lot more than a cute little story that's going on here. Because these are children, and you know children don't lie. Especially children that little. They don't know what that stuff is about. Interestingly enough, after the 6 o'clock Mass last night when she was there, I was out in a gathering space greeting people, and she came out with her grandmother, and I said, "Ava, where's Mary?" She turned and pointed. So, why is it that children are able to have these experiences and adults are not? One of the things that I see in children when they come and they arrive at St. Charles is because these children have been taken out of situations that are very traumatic. They're very wounded. They're very traumatized. But from the moment they get there, they begin to heal. And then something amazing begins to happen, which God brings forth and brings about. That in the healing, God restores their innocence. God restores their innocence. And I think that that's probably the reason why adults have such a hard time with being able to hear God, experience Him, or see Him. We've lost our innocence. It's the reason why parents hold their children so tight. That's what they're trying to protect, their innocence. And yet, my brothers and sisters, this is what Christmas is all about. A God who loves us so much that he doesn't send anybody else, but comes himself for the sole purpose of restoring our innocence, that we might have an experience of him, that we might be able to hear him, listen to him, speak with him and to him, so that someday we can really see him and be with him for all eternity. I know that on Christmas Day and on Easter Sunday, I have an opportunity to speak to people who oftentimes I don't see throughout the year. And so one of the things, first thing I want to say to them is, welcome. We are so pleased that you are here. Because one of the things that I know is I hear it in newspapers, television, wherever. A lot of people are beginning to lose their hope. What I want to say is that today hope was born. Hope was born today. And so maybe you're at a place, maybe you're at a point where you're willing to give hope in the flesh an opportunity so that your innocence might be restored, that your prayers and your hopes and your dreams may be answered. Give Jesus Christ a try. What have you got to lose? A right relationship with the Lord brings joy, brings peace into situations and circumstances where we never thought we would ever be able to experience joy and peace. And the fruit of joy and peace is love. Love. That's what the world needs. And that's what this day is all about. For today, in the city of David, was born hope and joy. Love came to the world. If a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old can have these kinds of experiences with God, it's only to point to what God really wants to do for each and every single one of us, if we're willing to become like his in our hearts. Merry Christmas.